All right, we're still on chapter 5, step 5, which is making the right choice, And I'm reading from my book, What Works When Diets Don't, We're also putting this out on all of our different platforms, YouTube, Rumble. So if you're watching this versus listening, a couple things. You'll see I have my midnight shadow, haven't shaved in a little while. But I don't want that to stop me from recording this morning. And then also I will be repeating a lot of things, not in a large amount of volume, but little things here and there, because a lot of people aren't going to listen to the book all the way through. They'll listen to certain sections. They'll hop right to this topic because it is really near and dear to their heart, or they need help in a certain area. But what we are covering in this next section is, what does the Bible say about food? Now, this is huge. And I don't know why even Christians go back and forth. Some of the meanest emails I get are from Christians on either side of the spectrum, full on whole foods, plant-based, cows are bad, chickens are of the devil, meat and dairy is from Satan. And man, I feel sorry for them, because they're just so, arrogant many times. Not everyone. I've actually went back and forth on a lot of different things, and I'm going to explain to you why I don't do that anymore. But then I get the meat crowd that plants are trying to kill us. I don't know if you've ever heard that before. And the plants do have what they call phytochemicals that keep away insects, but those can be good for us as humans. You weigh everything on the scale, and plants are huge in regard to long-term health and longevity. But I want to say a few things up front. I know it's hard. I don't know where you're at, but I was just having this conversation the other day with a friend of mine. We don't want to make this an obsession. A passion, yes, but an obsession, no. Obsession is, now there might be seasons, like, if you're on a fast or something and you've got to accomplish something in 30 days. And, I've crossed that line where it becomes an obsession if I'm trying to, lose weight or something, or if it's a spiritual fast, you're going to appear obsessed to some, but really it's just a wanting to pursue God more. So a couple things is, if it's an obsession, you're always thinking about it. You're on Twitter, Instagram, you're watching these feeds, TikTok, you want to look like that influencer. But you have to keep in mind, they probably have no kids. They've got 2 hours a day to work out. Many of them, especially men, are on hormone replacement therapy, which I do not really recommend, especially if you're under, 55, 60. It's a whole nother discussion. I actually talked about that on one of my podcasts with Dr. Paul Brillhart. You can probably find on my YouTube channel, and so an obsession, and also, I can't eat that. I can't eat that. I can't eat that. And you're just walking around it's hard to explain. But when it's an obsession and when it's like, no, I gotta stay strong right now. I gotta get through this, because on the other end of the spectrum, and I've been there, is just laziness, gluttony. We don't care. So I think finding that balance for me is keeping God at the center, getting that time in the morning with the Lord. And from that, being filled with the Spirit, and then you're going to make right decisions. My daughter makes a cookie. I'm going to try it. They make a smoothie. I'm going to try it. I think I shared on here before weeks ago. I think, I went to Chick-fil-A with my son. It was a present for him, and, got just some chicken and so, but there are times where I'll really dial that in as well. So you need to take that before the Lord and see if it's an obsession or if it's just a passion. And God has convicted me in the past, if it's too, for me and my wife, like, why'd you buy that? Why'd you buy that? Why'd you buy that? You don't want to break down, you don't want to hurt your family in the pursuit of health either. Let your kids, now a couple of my kids are following my example just from my example, not having to say anything. So that is really key to this whole thing, is making lifestyle health a lifestyle, a passion. This is the temple of God. And there's a verse I just taught on, many of you know that we are the temple of God. If anyone defiles the temple, God will destroy him. And it's interesting, you look up that word destroy in the Greek, it actually means God may hinder you. God may, strike you down, not in a bad way, but maybe we get sickness as a result of not taking care of our temple. And that's huge right now. And because of not taking care of the temple of God, this body that we reside in, God will allow certain things to happen to get us to wake up. Now, the Bible, whoever defiles the temple, is obviously talking about more of, I think, explicit things, sexual morality and things like that. But the overarching principle definitely applies. If we don't take care of this body, there will be ramifications. And even if a person tries to be as perfect as possible, the body is dying. It is fading away. A lot of these guys I follow on social media, longevity, we're going to live. Eventually, we're just one step away from living forever. No, you're not. You're not. You might prolong life a little bit, but, and I believe the Bible gives us a range of 120 years. It's in Genesis. The Bible so spot on all these issues, especially when it comes to, health and fitness. It says don't eat shellfish, right? For the children of Israel back with their dietary laws. We know that like the shellfish are at the bottom of the ocean, keeping it clean. Like they eat the toxic stuff. And so we shouldn't actually eat those. You should eat the fish with the fins and so many other things, from circumcision on the 8th day to washing your hands when dealing with dead people. I know, I think it was maybe in Europe, they were losing a lot of even moms after giving birth, and they didn't know why. And one of the physicians read the Bible, washing your hands, and they would go from autopsy on a dead person to delivering the baby, and they didn't know why they're experiencing all this. So the Bible is full of wisdom. So it took me 6 minutes to get here, but my point at the beginning was I don't get too caught up now in the diet debates. I used to, I've watched all the documentaries, the meat documentaries, the carnivore documentaries, the plant-based documentaries, the keto documentaries, and everything in between. And something that was fascinating too was raw diets. Like nothing's cooked. It's just raw. I'm like, wow, that would be challenging. And then I know there's a guy I follow. He has a fasting clinic, and all he eats is fruit. That's all he eats is fruit. I think they call it Fruitopian or something. And there's others online, and they look great, but biblically speaking, I'm actually going to read a section from my book. It's also in What Works When Diets Don't. And in case you're coming in late, you can download this book right now for free at the church website, westsidechristianfellowship.org. Of course, it's available everywhere, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, different things. But we want to make it a free download for you at the church website. You can follow along. You can get ahead of me. You can go back and you can highlight. I mean, of course, there's print on demand, but we don't offer that, just the free download. But it's also in my book. Oh, actually, I think I brought it today. Feasting and Fasting. So feasting and fasting, for those who are interested in fasting, this will really help you and help I'm addicted. So again, these are both available as free downloads. Help I'm addicted, controlling the cravings that control you, and feasting and fasting. You can download all these and get some great help. I'm actually putting another book on Audible right now. After this one, it's going to be a men's book, What Works for Men, Regaining Lost Ground. And so again, these are all free downloads at the church website. Enjoy reading. So what does the Bible say? That's where, I think it was a few years ago, I said, you know what? I'm not going to get caught up in these debates. I'm going to what does the Bible say? And I'm going to give you a brief well, let me just read it. Actually, I might be too repetitive if I just give you my thoughts and then read it. There are many views regarding what diet is ideal, and I just went through all the different diets for you. And I don't claim to have all the answers. Even experts in the field of nutrition are divided. But again, we can glean a great deal from the biblical accounts that are recorded for us in the Bible. Most diets are written from an evolutionary perspective, so it's important that we get our facts straight. And this is so important. I'm listening to guys that I'm not going to name them right now or ever maybe, but you're listening and they're like, well, because of evolution, I'm like, you've lost your mind. You're so smart in autophagy and apoptosis and brain-derived neurotropic factor and muscle retention and muscle breakdown and lipogenesis and gluconeogenesis and man, all these things. But we just kind of evolved. All these things just kind of, give me a break. The problem is they don't want there to be a God. That's the bottom line. Or I know I've talked to other people because of academia. You teach at Harvard, you teach at USC, you teach at UCLA, you teach at Stanford. You got to say evolution or you will be categorized as a quack, whatever they call those people. But the bottom line is, if you believe all of this just happened by random chance, you are the one that really need to, do some serious mental assessments here and understand, why am I coming up with that? Like you just study the cell, the mitochondria, how it produces ATP. I mean, you can get into what they just, discovered, the mTOR, the mammalian target of rapamycin, complex 1, complex 2. You look at all the things in the cell and you're like, my goodness, this screams a creator. And they have little motors that move around and that's just the cell. I mean, so anyway, back on track. That was my rant. But again, even diet experts are divided. A lot of people look at it from an evolutionary perspective. So we have to look at it from a biblical perspective. In the beginning of creation, God said in Genesis chapter 1, you can read this. If I were you, I'd read the whole chapter. I have given you every plant that yields seed that is on the surface of all the earth. Now, of course, we don't know exactly what those are before the flood. I've got some thoughts on it. I know the body operated a lot more efficiently, and they were not afraid of fructose in fruit because they moved a lot. Can you imagine? There's no horses. Well, there's horses, but I don't know if they know how to ride them yet. Chariots, cars, motorcycles, bikes. I mean, you are walking everywhere. And that's why, they could definitely eat a lot more carbohydrates, especially back then. So God said, I've given you every plant that yields seed on the earth and every tree that has fruit. So you see plants and trees, and this shall be food for you. In other words, nourishment. Your body, and I believe before the fall, the cells could keep replicating and reproducing. So when a person dies, usually the cells, they can keep reproducing, but the toxic buildup is greater than the effort to reproduce. And that's how we really age. And to every beast of the earth and birds of the sky, everything that moves on the earth will be given food from the plants to eat. So even animals ate food. And that's amazing. I mean, you'd think a gorilla would eat tons of meat, or an ox. And have you ever seen an oxen or a horse or a steer or a bull? I mean, look at these things, man. It's a pretty interesting topic, because then you have, of course, bears and other things, lions that are very carnivorous. But the protein amount must have been enough. Most plants have all the essential amino acids, especially if you combined some of them. And like I said, in 100 calories of broccoli, which would be a lot, and 100 calories of, I think, lean steak, would be a little bit. Lean steak, lots of broccoli. The broccoli actually has more protein. Now, if you take 100 grams and you weigh it, the meat is obviously more, but 100 calories of broccoli is a lot. It actually has more protein than meat. But I don't know how they ate, just grab a piece of broccoli, and most vegetables are not very good. So did they learn how to cook? Did they add some spices? There's so much life in plants. You can look at rapamycin that was discovered in Easter Island, I think 1970s, from the soil. You look at metformin that was, I might have got those backwards. One of those is, I think rapamycin, Easter Island. Metformin is from lilac, I think in France. And so there's so much life in the plants that it's amazing. So that's what God said. He gave us all plant food to eat. So if I were you, I would make that a major staple of your diet. There should be no reason, and I've got to work on this myself because I'm in a different state, a different season right now, but just a big salad with lots of clean greens, from, I'm not going to let you know what it is, spinach and artichoke and tomatoes and cucumbers and bell peppers and carrots. You could have so much nutrient dense food right there and low calories. So we were designed to eat living plant-based food. The life of the plant, think about this, vitamins, minerals, enzymes, is to be deposited into the body to restore, to renew, and to replenish the body. So you compare that with a Snickers bar, Captain Crunch, just a white bagel, box of crackers, Pop-Tarts. Pretty much anything in a box, and there's really no life-giving food. Your body really can't pull. That's when it says fortified with. That means it had to add vitamins and minerals, and it's never, in the fortified state, it's never as good as the natural state. And I won't get into that right now. Maybe later. But we eat that life-giving food. The other is dead food. So really, let's say I eat some crackers. Not much nutrient dense. It's not a nutrient dense food. So when I eat it, let's say it's not real healthy, or even chips. Let's say Doritos. Your body's going to break down the corn, the different things, and it is going to grab some of the energy from that. But if you get, then now it's got the toxic ingredients, the chemicals, artificial flavorings, some of them have monosodium glutamate, others have preservatives, some have partially hydrogenated oils, and your body's trying to clean all this out, and it's having a very difficult time. And so, yeah, you'll get some energy, you'll feel a little bit better, but it's not good for your body at all. It's detrimental long term, especially if you're mixing that with a soda, energy drink. I mean, it's just an invitation for disaster. So we read that after the flood, this is interesting, which is probably 1,500 years later, that everything that lives and moves was to be food for us except the blood. Now, it does go into clean and unclean animals, but don't drink the blood in the animal. What's interesting is people, they're so worried about fat, but fat in the natural state always came with protein. Show me one protein source without fat in it. Now there's lean fat, lean protein, different things, but so it tells me that the fat can be good in moderation, the right amounts, clean. I'm not going to go into it, but your body produces like 80-85% cholesterol without you eating cholesterol. And they're finding that, it's not really cholesterol, it's what's causing the damage in the arteries. And you hear a lot about, high density lipoproteins, which is ADL, HDL. And then you got the low density LDL. And the LDL takes the cholesterol to the arteries to repair the damage. So my concern is always what's causing that damage. So the LDL is the enemy because it's there, but it's repairing. So we have to look at, what's really causing the damage. And even, I remember I was researching this, I think it was the 70s or so, I don't remember, but the cholesterol in the medical field, you could have 300 and under. Then it dropped to, I don't know where it's at now, 200. I've seen 150. At what point do you realize, cholesterol is essential for every cell in the body. It's so important. It's actually a very healthy, I don't know if they consider a hormone. Actually, now that I'm saying that, I'm not sure on that one. We'll have to put a pin in it. Maybe I'll come back as I'm talking and let you know, or recording later. But you do have to watch it now. If you're overweight, now you've got visceral fat. You've got your fat cells that maybe increase 10, 15 times their normal size. There's a toxic state in your body. You've created miles and miles and miles and miles of new artery because of the excessive weight. And so that's in combination what's probably leading to heart disease and things like that. It's not just the cholesterol in itself. So, but let me keep going here. I think it's important. And the reason the blood, I believe, is not to be taken. I know a lot of pagan rituals involve that, but that's where, a lot of the toxins of the animal are contained in the blood. Many diseases travel in the blood. And God also identified the clean and unclean animals for this very reason. The unclean, as you know, are pork, and that's still not considered healthy today. The viruses, the bacteria, the parasites, things like that. Things like that. Was man not to consume meat until after the flood, which is actually approximately 1,600 years after the fall? If so, why? So think about that. So God said, only eat plants. Maybe they didn't even have a desire for meat until the fall, which happened in the garden there. And that's way before the flood. But we don't know. We don't know that 1,600 year period from the creation to the flood. They obviously ate meat, it sounds like. But we don't know why now this transition. I've heard a speculation. My speculation, after the flood, I think vegetation is sparse, and because of that, maybe the population is going to really increase. Vegetation sparse. Okay, now you can eat the animals. Maybe as a mechanism for what they call animal control. Like, I don't know, a lot of those people against hunting. I don't know if you knew this or not, but if you don't kill enough, the deer and different things, it can just overpopulate the earth. So you could have, it's allowed now. Meat's allowed. It's not ideal, but it's allowed. But then you see Jesus eating fish, making fish, God providing quail. There's so many different things. So that could be it. There's not enough vegetation, or, animal population control, or maybe protein. The need for protein is greater because of the atmosphere changing. We really don't know. But we do know that it is allowed, and it's not allowed in the sense that it's bad for you. It's not like, wine necessarily. You have a little, very, very minimal amount. The wine back then was probably 2%, but don't let it turn to drunkenness. So meat, it's allowed, but don't let it turn to gluttony. And so we kind of see the same pattern here. So, we don't know how did, with the plant-based diet, how did it provide all the B12, the calcium, the iron, the zinc, things like that we get in meat, especially like creatine and other things that are so important. I don't have the answer to it. So that's why personally, I think I try to have a well-balanced diet. But there are times where I'll eat way more meat and dairy than I normally would. And then there's times where I might just have a lot of maybe just take a break and like a Daniel type eating program. Daniel, I don't call it Daniel fast. I call it the Daniel healthy eating program. So is it permissible to eat meat and dairy, but not ideal? But then you get into the whole thing. I look at a lot of these guys that are plant-based only, and maybe they'll live a little longer, but they look. I want to be generous here, but they look kind of sickly and weak, and just not a lot of muscle. But then you have other people, in their 70s that I follow too, and so many of you do. They're in pretty good shape. You can tell they've probably retaining 20 pounds more of muscle than the guy at the same body height, and weight. Not weight, of course, but they're 20 pounds heavier. And so you can tell that, preserving muscle, there's a lot of benefits from falling and injuries as we get older. And so, I wish I could tell you exactly what to do, but I do know somebody who does have all the right answers, and you need to seek him every morning, in the evening, throughout the day, and he will show you. Maybe there's seasons to switch your diet back and forth. I think that's also biblical because, think about seed time and harvest. God gave us the 4 seasons after the fall primarily. And so there were times where I'm pretty sure they would eat a lot of meat if that's all they could get. Vegetables weren't growing. It was cold. Maybe they learned how to preserve the meat. They probably lost a lot of weight, and then they built up that weight again, times of feasting and famine. They would build up that weight again, and that's what fat really is. Fat is really stored energy that we need to get rid of. And so then there'd be another season, and so that fat would then be burned for fuel. It makes so much sense. It screams creator. They gain 20 pounds in the summer, and they're eating a lot more, and then they need that. Most people can go, a good month and a half, 2 months. Now there's, electrolyte issues, other issues with that. But, most people can go quite a while without eating. We've got a lot of stored fat. So I believe that the pre-flood atmosphere of the earth was much different than our living conditions today. Man lived in a healthier environment, and that might have provided more oxygen and greater protection against the harmful rays of the sun. The nutrient-dense plants and fruit-bearing trees probably grew in abundance. And then after the flood, that's when everything became very scarce. So I believe that God allows meat consumption because of the scarcity, and also possibly some of the health benefits, retaining muscle. We just don't know. From a biblical perspective, especially when it gets into, different verses I'll share at some point where, the Bible's pretty clear. I just read, actually it's funny, last week I was going to hopefully remember to say this because I didn't write it down. And I remember, God, as part of God's blessing, he said, you will have goats or sheep in abundance, and you will not lack curds and honey, which is dairy, like yogurt, and you think of kefir and things like that. So that was a blessing of God. And again, I think it's just being overweight, not being active, and when you're kind of backed up and you're toxic. So yeah, meat and dairy are not going to, and clean. I try not to eat, meat I don't know where it came from. Or now that could be an obsession more than a passion. I don't know, but I'm real careful on where I get my meat and dairy. And if I were you, I'd find maybe a farmer's market, somebody local if you can, or budget, and then try to order, clean meat and dairy. I know some of those health food stores sell raw milk, especially if I think it's called A2 raw milk, where it's actually resembles human breast milk. And so I'm not one of those people say, it's great for babies, and, why are we drinking a cow's milk? Well, biblically speaking, you can, and there are tons of it. If just don't take my word for it, Google the health benefits of raw goat milk. Even though it's hard to find, high in calories too. So you got to watch that one. I've had to limit because, I drink 2 cups. Well, I just drank 300 and some 50 calories and 20 grams of fat. And that's, if you're trying to lose weight or in moderation, that's quite a bit. And then you add, food to that. Like I dip some chocolate with some peanut butter. I just had 600 calories. So anyway, that is my sensing here on what the Bible says. I mean, in short, I suggest consuming meat and dairy sparingly for most of you, clean. Our main diet should consist of nutrient-dense foods, such as beans, sweet potatoes, if you're not limiting carbohydrates, a big, colorful salad made with homemade dressing without the sugar and the refined oils. And I know I've said this in the last podcast, but some of you might not have caught this. This is the key. This is a lifestyle. And contending for health and fitness, for many of us, is a lifelong challenge. So once you understand the battle, once you understand, okay, it's worth it. Okay, this is a lifestyle, means I blew it for a day, or I blew it for a week, or I'm not in a good spot now. I'm going to get back up. I don't want to live like this. I don't want to live, I remember when I was 240 pounds when I was first pastoring. The highest I've been was 270. I don't know if we'll ever show. I might have a picture he can insert here on this one. But yeah, and that was the highest. And then at 240, and I realized, man, I can't keep doing this as I get older. And then, slowly got down. But if I'm not careful, I can go back up. So I have to, okay, this is my struggle. Other people can't relate. Their struggle is something else. And so you do have to watch it. And so what I recommended on the last podcast was, or the section of the book, if you're, looking to the book or listening to the book, was to, go a couple weeks with, it's okay to be a little hungry. I would have maybe 3 meals, and we talked about portion size, chicken size here, and then, size for vegetables. And I'm not going to go into that. You can even look at portion sizes online. And, if you just stick to those portion sizes and no snacks, that's where I grab some peanuts. Oh, there's 300 calories. I grab some fruit juice. There's another 200. Grab this it's like snacks over the course of the day, chips and things. Plus, not only that, it raises your blood sugar levels, which of course increases insulin. As we know, insulin it also helps grow muscle, but it's also a fat storage hormone. And so that's important. So I would start limiting your calories. The bottom line is, and some people say, oh no, it's not about that. It actually is. It actually is. It boils down to, if I'm consuming, even if I've got great hormone, what they call optimum levels of hormones, my thyroid's working great. Everything's succinct. My testosterone's above 600. Everything's good. If I'm eating too much, I'm going to store it. Now, we talked about NEAT, the NEAT principle, non-exercise activity thermogenesis. Some people are just wired differently. They're wiry. We call them wiry. And so they're burning, an extra 1,000 calories a day more than you are. And so they can eat more, and so you have to find what works for you. But I would definitely limit my caloric intake. I wouldn't go crazy. But there are diets out there, 500, 600 calories, mainly high protein, half of that being protein. And it will get your body in a ketogenic state. It'll begin to burn the fat. And so it depends, if they said, hey, your obesity is leading to this and this, and you've got to lose 50 pounds. I would jump on that 500 calorie diet and not worry about, but you might springboard, you might, the yo-yo effect, and you will yo-yo if you don't make it a lifestyle. So see, if you make it a lifestyle, you get off the diet. Okay. I gained back 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pounds because of water weight, carbohydrates, retention of the water, the fiber. But you can even keep losing the fat and building the muscle after you stop that diet. And then you go a season for just maintaining a good caloric range. But you have to be strategic. You have to be smart. And that's what I'm helping you do in all these different areas of this book. So that will end this section on what does the Bible say about food.